This is a Genie S65 man lift, snorkel lift, boom lift. Anyway, I got this a little over a year ago, almost 2 years ago now. Let me turn that switch off. I got it on a bid-a-boo auction off of eBay. It was a rental unit out of Aberdeen, Washington, and I put a bid in on it. I didn't expect to get it because my bid was pretty low, so I was surprised when I did get it. It cost me almost as much to get it shipped up here as it did for the machine. Well, anyway, we got it up here and it works really good. I was really happy with it. I'm getting too old and fat and crippled up to be climbing up and down on ladders 30 feet off the ground anymore, especially moving the ladders back and forth 3 or 4 feet to move from one spot to another. And this thing worked pretty good. I used it a lot to do some repairs on the roof of the house up there and here on the hangar and a few other things. So I got some use out of it. I had it out here last fall and we fixed the roof on the hangar, and I was just going to do a last minute thing on it. So it was cold out here. It was in the winter time, or late fall, winter time, and it was cold and raining, of course. Well, I had it started up to warm the engine up while I went to do a few other things, and when I came back and switched it over from the ground controls, so it's got separate controls on it for the ground unit and for the basket. And that's a control panel for the ground unit, and there is a switch on there. On some of them it's a keyed switch, but on this one it's just a switch. Anyway, you turn that over to the ground unit and that turns it on for use on the ground for starting, and then there are some toggle switches there that you can use to move the machine around with. You can't move the machine physically back and forth, but you can move the boom and stuff with it. So anyway, I had it here warming up. It was a cold day, and when I came out and switched it over to the basket controls, the engine quit and I couldn't get it to start again. So when I turned it over to the ground controls, I tried starting it, it would start up. Well, let me show you what it'll do. It's because it's going to do the same thing right now. So it'll start, but it won't stay running. As soon as you turn the switch off, as soon as it disengages the starter, the engine dies on it. Well, I got to doing some investigation on it and stuff, and I was getting a code on there, and it looked like the code I was getting was 1.2, and looking at the Genie manual, I went online and found the Genie maintenance manuals and stuff. That suggested that there was a problem in the engine somewhere in the electronic throttle body. It's a fuel injected engine, and in the electronic throttle body. So I worked on that a little bit between rainstorms and snowstorms and stuff, and I was going to warm it up actually, I think, to change the oil and the spark plugs and things like that and do some maintenance on it, but I couldn't get it started after that to get it warmed up again. Anyway, I was looking at it and troubleshooting it and stuff, and I wound up finding a few things that didn't look copacetic on the engine. I wound up changing the throttle body and the map sensor and a couple of other things on there, and that didn't do anything to it. And kept doing more investigation on it and stuff, and checking it out and whatnot. And the next time I checked the code light on it, it gave me a code of 1 and then 2 and then 3. Well, I going through there and stuff, finding the codes mean they give you a 1 on there to start with, just to say that it's working. And so the code, well, it was either 1, 2, and then 3, or 2 and 3, or 1, 2, 3. Well, there are no codes in the troubleshooting book for 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. The only ones are for 1, 2. Anyway, I've messed around with it what I could and figured out how to swing the engine out. It seemed like it might be a fuel flow problem, so I changed the fuel filter here on this side and checked the fuel pump, and I was getting the fuel pump running. I was getting good fuel pressure here. So I got a fuel filter and put in on the engine side. Well, anyway, I checked the fuel pressure there and going into the engine and stuff, and that was all good. well, then it just got too cold to work on it outside. It started snowing and blowing and raining, and it was just too cold to work on it outside here. I studied the maintenance manual, the service manual, and the troubleshooting aspect of it and stuff, and then I started searching on the internet and looking for videos and things like that if people had similar problems. And the thing that we could come up with was that the ECM was bad, or ECU was bad. Well, they have devices that you can plug into it. Actually, the engine is just a standard Ford four-cylinder engine. It's an LPG, which means it can run off of either gas or propane. It's a fuel-injected engine, and it runs off a stupid damn computer. Anyway, they have a program that you can plug in there and a computer that you can troubleshoot it and whatnot. Of course, I don't have access to the program or the computer, and going through the stuff, I found things online that says where you could get it. But then it said that that was an old program and you had to have a Windows 98 computer to access it, or something with the right code in it. Anyway, it's all expensive to get that and everything, so I hem-hawed around about not getting it and worrying about the ECU being bad or the ECM being bad. And well, this one is completely outdated, and Genie doesn't support it anymore, and Ford doesn't support it anymore. But I actually found a place online that you could send it in and get it rebuilt, or trade it for a rebuilt one. So I was thinking about doing that, and as I got finished with some of the other things around here, when the weather was halfway decent, I would keep coming out here and poking around at this thing. I put the battery charger on it and charge the battery up, and just keep poking around with it, looking for broken wires and things like that. I pulled plugs and reinstalled them and stuff, because sometimes the plugs get a little bit of corrosion on them, and that'll cause problems, especially with as many plugs and wires as there is in this thing. Anyway, I was pretty much committed to it being the ECU being bad, and having to get that rebuilt or get a new one of those. Meanwhile, I was doing other things and really didn't have time to concentrate on this 100%. I had some things stored over here on the other side of this machine that I wanted to get out, and since I can't use the basket and the manlift on here, I've got a telefork, a forklift attachment that goes onto the Bobcat, and I've got a man basket on that. I wanted to get it out to use it in case I needed to get up anywhere. And then I had my wood splitter that mounts onto the Bobcat back here too, and it's time to go get some firewood. Well, there's an auxiliary power source on here for running the hydraulics. The battery will operate an electric hydraulic pump to operate the hydraulics and the units on there. So I used that to move the boom around and swung it around 180 degrees from what it is now, and got back in there and got those things out that I wanted to get out of there from behind that boom. And then I decided I wanted to move this thing a little bit. So it's just sitting on packed dirt here where it's at right now, and this thing weighs almost 30,000 pounds. Well, it's starting to sink into the ground, so I wanted to move it a little bit and get it off the holes that it's in, and so it doesn't disappear into the mud. Well, there's no way to move the machine from the control panel here on the machine itself. You have to use the basket controls to do that. So I thought, well, the auxiliary power deal worked. I would go up there in the basket controls and see if I could move it with that, and it wouldn't work. I could get the motor in here to run from the man basket, but I couldn't get any of the controls to operate. I could hear them whine a little bit and stuff, but I couldn't get them to operate. So once in a while, when I would let it sit for a while and get the battery charged up and stuff on it, I could come out and start it, and it would actually start and run for a few minutes before it quit, and then do the same thing over and over and over again. I decided to come out and just give it a try and start trying to troubleshoot it a little bit more. Well, lo and behold, it started right up and ran and stayed running. So I decided I would switch it over to the man basket there, the platform and the controls there, and maybe get it to move. Well, as soon as I switched it over to the platform controls, the engine died again, just like it did here this time when I turned it over there. I got to poking around, and on the man basket there's a foot pedal that you have to pull down to make anything in the man basket operate. I call it a dead man switch. Well, that switch is froze up and it was stuck down, so it was stuck in the closed position, which should have let me operate the controls from the man basket, but that didn't work either. But anyway, when I raised the foot pedal back up and opened that switch back up, then the engine quit here. So Anyway, that is good news in a way, because that means that the ECM is okay and the engine runs fine. It's an electrical problem somewhere in this system, and so we've got a big panel right here to worry about, and there are a million wires that go into that panel. That's a pretty complicated system, because when the switch is turned on to the control panel down here, the man basket controls don't work, and then you have to switch it over to the man basket controls for them to work, and then when you do, these controls down here don't work. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of switches and relays and all kinds of crap in there, and then of course you've got all the stuff up in the man basket there. Not just the dead man switch, but there's other switches up there. So far, what I've tested, most of the stuff seems to be working up there. So I'm not sure exactly what is wrong with it, and going through the troubleshooting charts in the manual really don't help me. They give a little bit of insight to it, but they don't address that specific problem. Oh, there could be a broken wire. I'm suspecting that control box up there, there's probably some corrosion in it somewhere, or there could be a broken wire someplace. This thing extends out 65 feet, so there's a lot of wire there that gets moved back and forth, folded up and doubled up and stretched back out again over time, every time you use it. But I'm kind of suspecting corrosion in somewhere in one of the switches or something like that. But we'll have to do a little bit of troubleshooting to find out and see, and that's what I'm gonna do today. We've got a day of open weather here now, clear weather here now, for just a day before another big storm comes in, so I'm gonna take advantage of it. Anyway, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get busy and do that. So the first thing I did here was raise up the man basket so I could get underneath it and inspect that wire that goes into the foot pedal, into the dead man switch, and the other wires that go in there. You can see there's a pretty good loop right there where that boom, the jib boom, attaches to the man basket. Anyway, it's a relief to figure out that it's not an engine problem and something else on it. Well, now that's interesting. Well, as I said, this is either gas or LPG operated. Well, there's switches on both the control panel and up there on the basket to switch from gas to LPG. So this engine has been quitting whenever I switch it over to the man basket. So I was trying to figure out some complicated reason of why it wasn't working. It would turn over, but it wouldn't start if I tried to start it from the man basket. I got to wondering last night if maybe I had the switch on the man basket on the platform set over to LPG instead of gas. But by the time I was thinking about it, it was dark out and it was pouring down rain. So I didn't come out here and check that. I had it raised up so I could check the wiring and stuff underneath the basket to see if it was good. And then I got a ladder and climbed up in there, and sure enough, that switch was set over to LPG. So I just turned the switch over to gas, and now it's working normally, and now the controls work up in the man basket. Of course, the dead man switch is still stuck down, but that eliminates a lot of troubleshooting. I'd almost guarantee that it's the dead man switch that is bad on there, the foot pedal switch, and I can get a new one of those for about $100 and change it out. But meanwhile, the machine is working now. God, I've been sweating on that and worrying over that for almost a year now, trying to figure out what was wrong with it and worrying that there was something wrong with the engine. In fact, now that it's running and everything, the engine light is out, so that means that there's nothing, no codes in the engine. It's not flashing or anything. Here, all this time I could have been using this machine. I could have fixed it with a pretty simple fix of just getting that dead man switch. And of course it's working now, so even with the dead man switch, it's just stuck closed, so that doesn't hurt anything. I guess it doesn't pay to assume something just because something looks like it's obvious to you. So. All right, well, that's enough of this then. That thing is working. I can order a dead man switch and fix that, and it'll be working normally, and I can use this the way it is. Yeah, that's good. Now I'll go do something else. So it rained pretty hard yesterday. The day before we had a little opening, a break in the morning, and I opened up the hanger, wrapped up that unit a 1/2 inch, those 20 sheets of 1/2 inch plywood, which I've been drying out in the hanger for a few weeks. I wrapped those up in some house wrap and drug some old sheet metal roofing down here and made a cover for it, and then took that unit of plywood out and stacked it up on my lumber pile. So that's out of the way now. I got a couple more things to do in the hangar, and then I can start doing maintenance on equipment in there. I can open the door and start doing some maintenance on equipment in there. We'll see. Now that I got this thing working, I might go up there and work on the house a little bit and put those 2x4s up there on that back addition on there so we can get it covered up, get it to dry out, and once it's drying out and everything is drying out underneath there, then I can start making the trusses to put that addition on the house, because I didn't want to do anything with it while it was wet. Shoot, there's a lot of things I can do now. First thing I'm going to do, I've got a piece of styrofoam out here in the roof of the hangar that is hanging out, that got blown out in the rafters up there. That thing got out, and then we got some drip edge that we put up there to keep the rain and stuff from blowing underneath the roofing tin and stuff there, and I was short one piece. Well, I'd found another piece that I can stick up there, so I can get that done. Oh, that changes my whole planning mode here. Now there's things I can do that I couldn't do before, or didn't want to do before, because I didn't want to climb a ladder. Okay, well, I'll get busy and get that stuff done, and I'll get that switch ordered for that dead man switch there.
He fixed it. That's totally wonderful.